Hello and welcome to another Black Crow video. I'm Sam, our melee world eater expert, and I'm here to talk to you about chaff units, skirmishing units, or your action monkeys. You know, the general stuff that score you points and make the opponent have to have bad engagements or not be able to move in certain spots. You know, all the little things that don't necessarily by themselves have a huge impact into the game, but over the course of a game, or definitely over the course of like a tournament, they will have like done the most work probably in your army. Yes, stuff that can kill stuff is great, but you need these things to win games. So yeah, before I hop into each unit and talk about where they're possibly where you can use them the most, where maybe some parts which you don't think about. I just want to say thanks to our sponsors, Terrainforge, Glasshammer, and Trident. They are fantastic sponsors of ours. You can get everything you could possibly want for the hobby from these three places. So please go check them out. The links in the description. So yeah, moving quickly on to Jakhals. So every World Eater list has at least one unit of Jakhals. You can't leave home without them. We all know this. And some of this stuff will probably be obvious to you, but maybe I will spark some thinking of how you could use them more. So start off, we've obviously got the basic home base holder, your home objective. They're going to stand on it. They're going to sticky it. And then they're going to stand and block out where your opponent can have reserves come in. So they're it's a good 10-man unit. They can spread out quite a lot and cover quite a large area for screening. And then obviously, if they're on your home, they can also do an action for recover assets. I think that's the only action that they can do back there, but obviously there's other stuff they could potentially do future, like later into the game. But that is the sort of the way that I use my one unit of Jakhals a lot, and the way I imagine most of you watching this use them. But there is other ways to use them. So, for example, if you start a game and your opponent, and you're having your pre-game conversation with your opponent, and they say, "Oh, I'm not putting anything in reserve," or like, and I don't have any uppy downy or anything like that. It's like, well, why is your 10-man jackal stood at home then? Right? They've stuck to the objective. They don't need to be there. They can push forward. So in that situation, quite often I will be using them as a sort of screen or some early objective play. So I could like run them out onto my opponent into a midfield objective, maybe try and stick one of those. They are very useful doing actions in that sense. And screening. So like the charge screen, if I just put, you know, obviously opponents can run forward, shoot your jackals, and then charge the thing behind them. But if you stand behind a wall, you've got your jackal layer here, in the front at the front of the wall, and they're like up against the wall, and then you've got a berserker layer or whatever you're wanting to keep safe, ain't bound or whatever, directly behind that. Yeah, they can do the whole 1-2 punch that we love to do, but we can obviously heroic to potentially stop that 1-2 punch, or we might have fight on death. We might have there's all kinds of things. But usually, I'm not too worried about somebody charging 2 units into me, and one of them has to kill a unit of jackals. So that's like what I mean by charge screen. You can just like use them in that way. The other thing is screen killers. I mean, jackals on the charge do an incredible amount of damage to other equivalent units. They will pick up 10 guardsmen. They will pick up, almost any like normal Eldar unit. They're insane in that matchup, right? They can do, they won't necessarily kill 5 Space Marines. So that's sort of where you're sort of drawing that line. But like if we think about like the 10-man units, like, oh, there's some Kroot here, or I'm trying to think of some other examples, but you know what I mean, right? So those equivalent to like a cultist unit, they win that fight. They go in, charge, wipe the unit easy. So that's a really useful thing to get rid of the opponent. So then when we do want to charge our berserkers in, our ain't bound in, things like that, that we're not having to hit these crappy screens. Or we are charging both at the same time, and this is the unit that enables that pile and consolidate 6 to get the most out of the actual hard hitting unit. So yeah, that's one way. I mean, one of the things that I've started putting in more than one unit of Jakhals, and Jakhals can like be so useful. One of the tricks that I use is I'll start the Jakhals in my Rhino and have Khan's unit somewhere nearby that they can run and jump in. So turn one, the Jakhals get out 3 inches from this safe spot. Um, and then move 7, which makes them move 10, which usually lets them get onto an objective without having to advance turn 1, which lets them do an action on it, right? So if you've got like Terraform, for example, you can get out, go Terraform, and then instead of having to advance on, and that's one less. That's either one Terraform you're doing earlier, or one less spawn unit that has to go and do it, and so that enables the spawn to do something else, which I'll talk about spawn in a second. But there's a lot more uses for Jakhals than just standing at your home. So I think having more than one unit is actually quite practical. They're very, very annoying. Once they do get up into the midfield, taking position on the board, like just holding, just blocking movement once they get there. Obviously, they die like nothing, but then they can still potentially sticky on death if they don't make it to the point where they sticky it in the command phase. So I think they're really, really useful in a lot more situations than people will give them credit for, and especially charging. They also have grenades, which might not come up, but I have had my Jackal unit grenade Fugan to death. So, like, you never know. When it comes up, it's great. When it doesn't matter, right? The other thing I've got in here is Fight on Death Nullifier. With Victrix Guard coming into the meta at the moment, and then there's also plenty of other places where there's Fight on Death. If you charging, let's say my personal favorite unit, the 20-man Berserker unit, that has a 3-inch fight, right? So if you charge the Jackals in first, and then charge the Berserkers in, you can tag the unit. You can block up a lot of the unit with the Jackals, and then tag the unit with the Berserkers and hit the unit from outside of their engagement range, so that not one guy at least is going to have to be able to hit Berserkers, right? Because you have to have someone in normal engagement range. But you could have potentially have, let's say they have a 6-man Victrix unit. If you're only in combat with one of them and the Jackals are in combat with the rest of them, then um, then your Berserkers can only be smacked on Fire and Death by one of them. And then the Jackals will get slaughtered, but that saves your Berserkers from being killed. So it's potentially like a really, really useful thing there. Obviously, they're a bit slower, so it is difficult to get them into that position. But if you can manage to do it, it's amazing. So something to think about, especially with the 10-man. You've got a lot of room to just put models into places to block things and basically get the most out of your models in position. It can get a bit finicky there. So Jackals, don't sleep on Jackals. Genuinely, on the charge, they hit reasonably hard, and even if you really need to kill a unit that's maybe a little bit tougher, if we're talking about like Space Marines, I mean, they should still kill a scout unit probably, but like if you're wanting to kill guarantee the kill. If you have 8-bound nearby, they get 3s to hit. If you have, you can always spend 1 CP for an extra AP, and suddenly this unit is smacking extremely hard. So yeah, Jackals. Consider putting more in, right? Like if you've got 130 points left, 2 units of Jackals. Like suddenly, I'm really liking running 3 units of Jackals at the moment. You can get a lot out of them. And starting them in the Rhino is fantastic. Just slight webcam issues. Don't know if that one's coming back. So, all right, next Spawn. Spawn they are chaff units. They are skirmishing units, and they are fantastically good. Like I think no one is, it's not a hot take to say that Spawn are one of our best units and should be taken in a lot of lists, or taken multiple times in a lot of lists. So the main thing for them is like I describe them as fast alpha. So they're not, obviously it's not an alpha strike in the same way as like charging your entire army into opponent turn 1, when we used to auto advance Angron 20 inches and charge him or whatever. Like he's not. We're not talking about that kind of alpha strike. We're talking. I just mean, oh, they've mispositioned. They've misdeployed this unit here that's reasonably squishy, and I can get spawn into it. So with the scout a plus 10-inch move plus advance and charge, you can get across the board into positions your opponent is not ready for incredibly quickly, and it's an expendable unit. So I've some of the best things I've done with the spawn have been tagging vehicles, like enemy vehicles, so that they can't move and shoot into firing lanes. Running into a predator or a DDA or something like that, right? Like you just get in. You're not going to kill it, but then it lets you stage in a position that you wouldn't otherwise normally be able to because you've blocked them from coming and shooting you. And then or something like killing assassins. So I've had in multiple games, I've had Spawn go and kill Calidus assassins turn one, which gets rid of the Vectora. I've sent Spawn into the Orc character, the uppy downies. There's a quite, you can send Spawn into something like a Venom and kill small Venom. So it's the fast alpha I mean that it's like people don't necessarily, like, they think they've deployed fine and you're expecting your spawn to die, but you can go and just like pinpoint out something that your opponent might not be ready for or might not want you to pinpoint out. Go after that combi lieutenant, right? Yeah, he can reactive move, but if we get the fast enough movement, you can get to the other side of him, so he can't reactive move away from you. All of this stuff, right? Sticky on death, right? A lot of the time, Spawn won't have that mispositioned unit that it can go and kill, but they can go and stand on objectives turn one and do an action, or like terraform, or one of the many potential like things like cleanse. And then when they're on those objectives, they sticky on death, right? So the opponent comes forward. If they don't stand on the objective, giving you something to charge next turn, then you can just stick the objective, which is fantastic, right? Like it's just such a utility thing. And Spawn aren't that easy to kill. They're not, if something serious goes at them, they will die, but it does require some form of commitment. Otherwise, the Spawn have a chance to just scam the opponent. They've so that's sticky on death and action monkey. They they can kill screens. They are not touching a 10-man unit. They are like the opposite of Jakhals in that sense, right? They can go into 5-man units and be reasonably efficient to it. Especially like they're not bad into Marines. I have a very bad experience of trying to kill scouts, like Space Marine scouts with Spawn. For some reason, no matter what I do, I always only kill like 2 or 3, which is hilarious because sometimes that includes having extra AP and 8-bound buff on them with sustained hits, and still failed to kill a squad of scouts. So, but it's funny, Spawn will surprise you when they shouldn't kill something, and they might go hard on that. Spawn are fantastic into the AdMech matchup because of the damage too. They can go and punch all of their 2-wound models quite effectively. So yeah, I think that's one of the shrinkers. Then fire and death nullifier. I mean, I explained it with the Jakhals. Spawn are both better and worse at this job. So depending on how the opponent has their unit set up, if they're stretched out a little bit, you can have like basically the unit. Trying to think of how. So you can hit one end of the unit, especially with something like 8-bound, right? Or once again, the 3-inch fight thing. So you hit the one end of the unit and you spawn fast enough to get to the other end of the unit. So then they have to, if they want to interrupt, they have to hit the spawn. If they want to fight on death, they have to hit the spawn. These sort of things, right? So you just throwing bodies that then they have to fight that way instead of being able to pile into your unit and fight you in a different way. And you can block, yourself from being able to base, so that because they've got reasonably big bases, so that then you can have different positions. So it's a similar thing. And the other thing in here is extra damage. There's quite a lot of times where the maths of your unit hitting this tough thing, you don't quite kill it. If we're talking about like a big knight, or we're talking about like a tough unit with like a character or something like that, sending in the spawn as just that last little bit of like, okay, I'm going to do most of it, and then the spawn will finish you off. Especially when we're thinking about like sustained lethals into like a knight, for example. It's like, okay, I'm gonna get a couple through. I'm gonna do like 4 to 6 damage, and that's enough, right? Like that suddenly makes the maths of me being like, oh, I'm on the edge of killing you here on average, and suddenly it's like, oh, I should kill you. Um, so they're really, really great at that. They're just great at just removing the small like 5-man units that the opponents have and just catching their fast units because we're faster. Whereas like the Jackals might struggle with that because they are significantly slower. Um, so yeah, spawn. Think about how to get them into different spots. Obviously, with the scout, you want to enable their scout. So the next unit I want to talk about is Goremongers. So Goremongers with their so the main thing about Goremongers. So I always have a unit of Goremongers in my list because they just give you that board control, right? Even if it's not like trying to fight off infiltrators with people. It just stops somebody from just jailing you, right? It stops somebody from just throwing a unit in your face and stopping you from being able to get out. And that's kind of important in quite a lot of matchups. So board control is big for them. They have a reactive move, which also means that you can like sort of take some board control, and then when the opponent comes towards you, like if you stand up against a wall, which means you've got like you're like the furthest forward you can be while hidden to then enable you going and charging something with them. While also, if the opponent comes and runs at you, if you're playing non WTC, you can reactive move 1 inch away from the wall so they can't charge you. Or the thing that I like to do as well is you sort of set yourself up where you reactive move so that if they do charge you, you have a heroic, which is quite a nice thing. So it's almost like bait. And then the other thing is you can just reactive move more models onto an objective as well if they come and try and just out OC. Uh, so still have that sticky on death. They are very squishy, but they have the sort of innate. They're basically jackals, but faster when it comes to like killing stuff. They have a lot of attacks. They've got lance, got strength 5. Yeah, they've not got AP, so they're not killing things with 2-up saves. But they will just put a lot of wounds into most things, and so they'll pick up most screening units, which is like fantastic for. Oh, I infiltrated. I then charged into my opponent's screening unit turn 1 on the edge of their deployment zone. Okay, now they're jailed a bit with, I've got on the board control in that sense because I've got a unit blocking them, makes them struggle to move out of their deployment zone while I'm staging up the rest of my army. And that's one less unit that they have to block me when I want to go at them. So Goremongers I find are incredibly useful for this. And they still have the fight on death nullifier in that sense as well. Because they can just go and tag things, or I've used them as well to help me alpha strike into armies with fight first. So I throw them into the fight first unit, and once again, like it's the same thing as like fight on death, interrupt, or a fight first nullifier. I suppose is the better way of doing it. You throw them into the fight first unit. The fight first unit slaughters them, and then you pile into that unit. And they probably have like maybe 1 or 2 guys that gets to attack your unit if you've done it right. So yeah, because one of the things you can do as well is because it's like an 8-man unit, or with the Jackals a 10-man unit, you can block where if you could potentially block like all of the places your unit could base, which means that you can then make it so only one of their models can fight, so that you still will leave a gap where you can go within an inch with one of your models, and so that you sit in that spot. But yeah, anyway, that was sort of a whistle stop tour through the 3 main sort of skirmishing units. And I think like hopefully I've just put some thought processes in that you can think about, like how to be aggressive with your skirmish units. You want to be killing their units as much as you can, trying to avoid using your key units to do that. If you can just pick off all of their stuff, stick some objectives, and force them to bring out their proper units before you have to commit any of your proper units, you're in a very winning board state at that point. Remember as well, if somebody's not got anything in reserve and not got uppy downy, put your jackals on the front side of your home objective, sticky it on turn 1, and run off it and run into the middle of the board. Like stretch yourself back a bit. It's well worth doing. just get more and more out of your Jakhals. The amount of games, yes, where you've got like where Jakhals is the last unit left alive. I get it. I've had that too, but it feels better to use them earlier. And potentially save yourself one of your key units for a little bit longer and make them commit a little bit more so you get a better engagement. But yeah. All right. Sorry for the webcam breaking, but I tried about 4 times to make this video. So thank you for watching, and please, yeah, check out the sponsors, and I will see you in the next one.